Imagine for a second that you're playing a video game and you've just unlocked God mode.
Oh, yeah. The best feeling for about 10 minutes.
Right. Exactly. Like you have infinite health, infinite resources. You can instantly teleport anywhere on the map, and absolutely no enemy can actually hurt you.
Yeah.
It sounds like the perfect way to play, right? But if you've ever actually used a cheat code like that, you know exactly what happens next.
The game just gets incredibly boring.
Totally boring. Within an hour, the thrill is totally gone. It becomes deeply unfulfilling. And I mean, ironically, kind of anxiety inducing because you just don't know what to do with yourself anymore.
You're just wandering around an empty map.
Exactly. So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are looking at why you might be feeling exactly like that in your everyday life. And we're going to use a massive stack of research to figure out how to fix it.
It really is the ultimate paradox,
Yeah.
of having everything you could ever want. Without the struggle, the human system just stops functioning the way it was designed to.
And that is exactly where we find ourselves today as modern humans. I mean, we literally live like the gods our ancestors used to invent myths about.
Yeah, we really do.
We don't have to hunt our food. We can fly across the globe in a matter of hours. And we have narcotics that can just erase physical pain with a glass of water.
Right.
Yet, despite this absolute peak of physical comfort, we are facing this massive psychological crisis. Like, according to the World Health Organization, 614 million people, that is almost 8% of the global population, suffer from mental disorders like anxiety and depression.
Which is wild. And I mean, it tells us that something in our environment is fundamentally clashing with our biology.
Yeah.
To understand our modern angst, we really have to look backward. We are dealing with this profound concept called evolutionary mismatch.
Okay, evolutionary mismatch.
Yeah, it's the idea that our biological hardware is essentially lagging millions of years behind our rapidly updating cultural software.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to explore exactly why our, God mode modern life is making us so miserable.
Right.
And we're using insights from evolutionary psychiatry, behavioral psychology, and human history. So to start, I think we have to look at how our brains actually process comfort.
We do, yeah.
There's this concept in the research called the hedonic treadmill, or hedonic adaptation. It's this idea that humans always return to a relatively stable baseline of happiness no matter what major life events happen to them.
Yeah, good or bad.
Exactly. I like to think of it like the central air conditioning in your house, like you only really notice it when it breaks.
That's a great analogy.
Right. But otherwise, you just grow totally numb to the temperature.
You do, and you're hitting on the core problem here, but it operates even deeper than just ignoring our comforts.
Yeah.
It's driven by biological habituation.
Okay.
There's this landmark study from 1978 by Philip Brickman and his colleagues that illustrated this just beautifully.
What do they do?
Well, they interviewed 22 people who had won massive lotteries.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then 29 people who had recently become paraplegic.
Wait, really? So completely opposite ends of the human experience.
Exactly. You would assume their day-to-day happiness levels would just be vastly different, right?
Yeah, of course.
But remarkably, shortly after their massive windfall, the lottery winners reported being no happier than a control group of just, regular people.
That's crazy.
And the paraplegics, while initially and obviously understandably devastated by their accidents, they largely expected to return to their baseline of happiness in a couple of years. And they actually found joy in everyday activities again.
Okay, wait, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
Surely winning the lottery fundamentally changes your day-to-day stress, right?
Huh.
I mean, you never have to worry about a mortgage or a medical bill ever again.
True.
So how can a biological set point just ignore that kind of total life-altering financial freedom?
Well, what's fascinating here is that evolutionary survival is driven by reproductive success and staying alive, right? Not by sustained happiness.
No.
Evolution simply does not care if you are happy.
It just wants you alive.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. If our ancestors found a giant honey tree and just stayed permanently elated and satisfied by that one victory,
Yeah.
they would just sit there.
Right, they'd never do anything else.
They'd lose the drive to survive the next winter or, outrun the next predator. So the brain is literally designed to reset your satisfaction to zero so that you stay hungry, you stay vigilant, and you keep striving.
Wow.
A permanent state of bliss is actually biologically dangerous.
Biologically dangerous. Man, if permanent bliss is biologically dangerous, it makes complete sense why Giving up hunting for farming was such a psychological trap.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, Yuval Noah Harari actually argues this in his book *Sapiens*. He calls the agricultural revolution history's biggest fraud.
It's a bold claim, but he backs it up.
He really does. We had this grand idea that we were domesticating wheat, but really, the wheat domesticated us.
Yeah.
We thought we were securing our food supply, but we ended up trapping ourselves in these concentrated, crowded settlements. We took on way heavier workloads, ate a much worse, less diverse diet, and basically fell into this luxury trap.
Right, because what started as a surplus to make life a little easier.
Yes, exactly. It became this exhausting necessity that we couldn't walk away from.
Exactly. I mean, it was a massive success for the propagation of human DNA, right? Like our populations exploded because we could suddenly feed more people.
Right.
But it was a complete disaster for individual subjective well-being. We started living in a way that our brains and bodies had just not evolved to handle, and we never stopped.
And if our brains are designed to adapt to comfort and constantly seek out new, immediate challenges, what happens when the environment around us changes faster than our evolution?
That's the million-dollar question.
Because for 90% of human history, we were hunter-gatherers. We worked maybe, 20 hours a week on basic subsistence?
Yeah, roughly 20 hours.
Which left a huge amount of time for communal bonding, storytelling, and just being with our tribe.
Right.
And you contrast that with the reality you and I live in today. I mean, sedentary lifestyles, sensory overload from constant digital notifications, living in these massive concrete jungles where you might not even know your neighbor's name.
The psychological toll of that shift is just stark. I mean, if you look at traditional hunter-gatherer groups that still exist today, like the Kaluli people of Papua New Guinea, researchers found that only 1 in 2,000 people met the criteria for clinical depression.
1 in 2,000.
Yeah. And compare that to industrialized nations today, where it's over 5%.
That is a massive jump.
It is. And looking at that 2017 WHO data, the global prevalence is heavily skewed toward disorders that react to the environment.
Okay, like what?
Well, anxiety is at 3.8%. And depression is at 3.4%. Meanwhile, the more heavily genetically driven conditions like bipolar disorder are at just 0.6%, and schizophrenia is at 0.3%.
Wow. Those numbers really bring to mind Sebastian Junger's book, Tribe.
Oh, yeah. Brilliant book.
It really is. He explores how veterans returning from war zones often struggle with incredibly high rates of PTSD, and it's not just because of the trauma of combat.
Right, it's the loss of the group.
Exactly. It's because they profoundly miss the intimate, tight-knit bonds of platoon life. In modern society, we've largely lost that tribal connection.
We really have.
Younger points out this incredible irony that adversity can actually be a blessing. Like, sometimes people remember surviving a terrifying natural disaster more fondly than a luxury tropical vacation.
Which sounds crazy until you think about it.
Right, because the disaster forced everyone to drop their individualistic pursuits and actually come together as a tribe again to survive.
It forces connection.
It does, but, I'm sure some of you listeners are probably skeptical right now. Like, are we just romanticizing the past because we're bored with the present?
That's a fair question.
Because Harari points out in *Sapiens* that early humans were pretty brutal. I mean, we wiped out half the planet's large mammals.
We did.
Child mortality was terrible. Disease was rampant.
Yeah.
It wasn't exactly an Eden, right?
No, it wasn't. And this raises an important point. We have to be clear here. Evolutionary psychiatry does not romanticize the past.
Okay.
It simply observes it to understand our baseline hardware. A great way to understand this is through the thrifty gene hypothesis.
What's that?
Well, in ancestral times, genes that made your body incredibly efficient at storing fat were highly advantageous,
Sure.
right? Because food was scarce.
Right, you needed to hold on to every calorie.
Exactly. Today, in a world of cheap, calorie-dense food, those exact same thrifty genes cause obesity and type 2 diabetes.
Oh, I see.
The genes didn't change, the environment did. And we can apply that exact same logic to our social brains.
Okay, wait, so you're saying our brains actually process a lack of socialization the way our bodies process a lack of calories?
Precisely. Our deep-seated need for tight-knit, interdependent groups is what kept us alive on the savannah.
Right.
Our neurochemistry rewards us with oxytocin and dopamine when we're physically close to our tribe, mirroring their emotions and sharing resources.
Yeah.
But in an era of digital isolation and individualistic capitalism, those neurochemical pathways are just empty.
Mm-hmm.
That social need is literally starving.
comparing social isolation to actual genetic starvation, here's where it gets really interesting to me.
Yeah.
Since we are trapped in this mismatched environment, how does this evolutionary friction actually manifest in our minds today?
That's the key.
Because it feels like our mental disorders are often like over-engineered immune responses.
Yes.
Like it's like having a severe allergy where your body attacks a totally harmless peanut as if it were a deadly virus.
Exactly.
The response is natural, but it's wildly miscalibrated to the actual threat level.
That is precisely the shift in perspective that evolutionary psychiatry offers. Traditional medicine usually looks at proximate causes, the immediate how.
Right, like how do we fix it right now?
Exactly. How is the brain chemistry altered? How do we fix the serotonin levels to make the patient feel better today?
Yeah.
Evolutionary psychiatry, on the other hand, looks at ultimate causes. The why.
The why.
Why did these genetic traits survive natural selection in the first place? And this approach utilizes Tinbergen's 4 questions.
Okay, Tinbergen's 4 questions.
Yeah, one of which is phylogeny, which is basically just a fancy word for tracing how a specific trait evolved over the entire history of a species. We look at the adaptive value of these traits.
Okay, let's apply that to anxiety then. There's this concept called the smoke detector principle, coined by evolutionary biologist Randolph Ness.
Yes, I love this concept.
It's so good. Imagine you're an early human on the savannah, and you hear a rustle in the grass. Fleeing in a total panic costs you maybe 100 calories of energy. If it was just the wind or a monkey, you lost 100 calories. No big deal.
Just survive.
Exactly. But if it's a lion and you don't run, you lose 100,000 calories, meaning you become lunch.
Yeah, game over.
Right. So anxiety is actually an adaptive overactivation. It is mathematically much safer for your brain to trigger a false alarm 1,000 times than to miss one single real threat.
That's it, exactly. If you've ever felt your heart pounding just because your phone buzzed with an email from your boss on a Sunday, that is your ancient smoke detector blaring.
Wow, yeah.
Your brain perceives a threat to your social status, which is your job, as a literal threat to your survival.
That makes so much sense.
And we see similar adaptive logic with depression, actually.
Really? How so?
There's the analytical rumination hypothesis. This suggests that depressive withdrawal, that intense loss of interest in normal activities, is actually an evolved mechanism to force an individual to reduce all outside distractions and focus single-mindedly on solving a highly complex social or survival problem.
Oh, wow. I was also reading about the social competition hypothesis for depression, which is just fascinating.
Oh, right. John Price's work.
Yes, it frames depressive low mood as a submissive yielding strategy. The researcher John Price noted that when chickens lose a fight in the pecking order, they withdraw and act submissively.
Right.
This signals defeat and stops the dominant chickens from attacking them further, essentially saving their lives.
It's brilliant.
Right, so depression might partly be an ancient biological white flag, a way to de-escalate hierarchy conflicts so you aren't killed by your rivals.
Yes, it's a really profound way to look at it. And when we look at neurodivergence like ADHD and autism, the evolutionary lens is incredibly revealing too.
Yeah, how does ADHD fit in?
Well, ADHD can be viewed through the hunter versus farmer theory. Think about a nomadic hunter. Traits like hyperactivity, impulsivity, and novelty seeking were brilliant survival strategies. You needed to constantly scan the horizon, jump at sudden noises, and hyper-focus intensely during a hunt.
Right, you'd be the best hunter in the tribe.
Exactly. It's only in a sedentary agricultural society or today, sitting still at a desk in a corporate cubicle for 8 hours that these traits suddenly become a disorder.
That makes perfect sense. And it's a similar story when we look at the spectrum of autism, specifically the systemizing trait.
Yes.
Temple Grandin, who is arguably the most famous autistic advocate and scientist, has a brilliant quote about this.
What did she say?
She said, "Who do you think made the first stone spear? That wasn't the yakety-yak sitting around the campfire. It was some Asperger sitting in the back of a cave figuring out how to chip rocks into spearheads."
That is so true.
Right. It highlights how hyperfocus and the ability to ignore social chatter to deeply understand angles, materials, and systems was absolutely crucial for human technological advancement.
We even see evolutionary explanations for behaviors that are actively harmful to society.
Like what?
Well, take traits that fall under what psychologists call the dark triad, which groups together narcissism, Machiavellian manipulation, and psychopathy.
Right.
In evolutionary terms, a lack of empathy and high self-interest can actually be viewed as a cheater strategy.
A cheater strategy.
Yeah, game theory shows us that a cheater strategy is incredibly successful, but only at very low frequencies in a population.
Oh, because if everyone does it.
Exactly. If there are too many cheaters, society collapses and the cheaters are punished or exiled. This perfectly aligns with the fact that psychopathy exists in about 1% of the general population,
Wow.
but it can be up to 20% in prison populations. It represents a high-risk, short-term mating and survival strategy that simply persisted in the gene pool.
I'm struggling with something here, though.
Okay, what's that?
If being hypervigilant kept us alive, I get why anxiety exists. But some anxiety or depression is so crippling that people can't even leave their house or function at all.
Right.
That doesn't seem like a survival advantage even in the past. Has evolution just completely broken down? Why hasn't natural selection weeded out these extremes?
That is a great point, and it comes down to a concept called mutation-selection balance.
Okay.
Natural selection acts on genetic mutations over vast amounts of time. The human brain is a massive mutational target. I mean, over 80% of our entire genome is expressed in the brain.
Wow, 80%.
Yeah, but our environment changed radically in just a few thousand years, which is barely a blink of an eye in evolutionary time.
So it's like trying to run massive, modern Windows 11 software on a desktop computer built in 1995.
Ah, exactly.
The hardware simply hasn't had the time to upgrade to match the incredible demands of the new environment, so it just crashes.
That's a great way to put it.
Uh,
Our genes just haven't had time to catch up to the concrete jungle.
mm-hmm.
And I really must emphasize something critical here.
Yeah.
Just because a defense mechanism like anxiety or depression is natural does not mean we shouldn't treat it.
Right. That's a dangerous trap to fall into.
It is. When anesthesia was first invented, some doctors actually refused to use it on patients because they argued pain was quote-unquote natural.
Oh my God, that's horrific.
Right. That was a dangerous fallacy then, and it's a fallacy now.
Mm-hmm.
We must still relieve the suffering, obviously. Evolutionary psychiatry just gives us a much better map of where that suffering actually comes from.
Right, so if our hardware is stuck in the Pleistocene, but we live in a world of Slack messages, Uber Eats, and social media, what do we actually do?
Right. How do we cope?
Yeah, how do you cope without just abandoning society and moving into the woods? Which brings us to a concept by neuroscientist Moshe Bar called mental fitness.
Yes.
The core idea is that humans are designed for progression, not endless comfort. Avoiding all discomfort actively weakens our psychological endurance.
It's true.
So mental fitness is literally like going to the gym for your brain. We have to intentionally lift the weights of discomfort because our environment no longer forces us to.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it means radically reevaluating our goals.
How so?
Well, research by Bruce Hetty on happiness shows that adopting zero-sum goals like chasing immense wealth, career dominance, or social status, where your win is someone else's loss,
Right.
actually has a negative impact on your subjective well-being.
Wow.
But adopting non-zero-sum goals like altruism, building a family, or community volunteering actively increases well-being. Volunteering triggers that ancient tribal circuitry. It tells your brain you are part of a mutually reliant group, which actually lowers your baseline stress.
That's amazing. And there are incredibly practical biological hacks we can use to trick our ancestral brains into feeling safe, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Like Shinrin-yoku, which is the Japanese practice of forest bathing.
I love that concept.
It's great. Just being immersed in a natural green environment measurably lowers cortisol levels and blood pressure. And we're also seeing this in architecture now with biophilic design.
Yes, bringing nature indoors.
Exactly. Incorporating natural sunlight, living plants, and organic materials like wood into office buildings and homes to drastically reduce sensory stress.
Because we cannot rewind the clock and go back to the Paleolithic era. And honestly, given the miracles of modern medicine and dentistry, we really wouldn't want to.
No, definitely not.
But we can consciously engineer our modern lives to simulate the ancestral inputs our brains still crave. We need community, we need exposure to nature, and crucially, we need manageable difficulty. We need meaningful challenges to overcome.
So let's look at the journey we just took. We started with the paradox of modern luxury. Why playing life on God mode makes us so miserable.
Right.
We decoded the hedonic treadmill and realized our brains are wired to reset our happiness just to keep us surviving.
Yeah.
We explored how our hunter-gatherer brains are misfiring in the digital age, missing the tribe and the physical engagement we evolved for. And we learned that your anxiety might not be a broken brain at all. It might just be a million-year-old smoke detector, trying desperately to keep you alive in a world it doesn't quite understand.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you? Look at your own routine this week. Where are you prioritizing frictionless comfort over actual growth?
That's the question to ask.
Are you numbing out with digital convenience when your brain is actually starving for a difficult, meaningful task? Or maybe a deep face-to-face connection with your tribe?
And as you think about how to navigate that mismatch, I want to leave you with one final kind of provocative thought about where we might be heading next.
Okay, let's hear it.
We've talked all about changing our environment to fit our biology. But there's a growing movement called transhumanism that wants to solve this problem by doing the exact opposite.
Wait, rewriting our biology to fit the modern world.
Exactly. Thinkers like David Pierce suggest we could use genetic engineering to create what he calls biohappiness.
Oh, hell, happiness.
Yeah. By editing our genome to include hyperthymia-promoting genes, which would essentially engineer a baseline state of extreme, unwavering happiness, we could recalibrate our hedonic set point permanently.
That sounds like a sci-fi movie.
It does. Pierce even suggests we could use wireheading, which is the process of directly stimulating the brain's pleasure centers with technology to eradicate psychological suffering entirely.
So you mean literally hacking our own biology so we just feel blissful all the time, no matter what happens around us?
Exactly. But it leaves us with a profound philosophical dilemma.
I can imagine.
If evolution built us to be anxious, hypervigilant, and perpetually unsatisfied so that we would survive and progress, what happens when we delete that mechanism?
Wow.
If we bioengineer a future where we feel uniform bliss without any effort, without any struggle, have we finally beaten the system? Or have we just stepped into the ultimate inescapable golden cage?